So, I want to do an introduction to psychoanalysis. I don't want to get into the why I think it is important to do this. That will take a lot of time. I want to get into looking at concepts in psychoanalysis. They are like keys to understanding discourse in psychoanalysis. What I mean is that when you are reading a psychoanalytic text or listening to a psychoanalytic based talk, it's very difficult for you not to know the terms that are used to designate concepts. So what I'm trying to do in this video is to put light or bring into light different concepts. And I want to start with the first, which is symbolic order. Order spelled ORDER. So the symbolic order, as the name implies, talks about symbols. Not really symbols per se. Talks about the signifiers. We'll talk about what signifier is, but this video is not for it. So I will just go ahead and talk about the symbolic order. So I want you to imagine a kid that is giving birth to today. That particular kid comes into the world not with culture, not with having knowing what is good or bad, or not coming with a congenial knowledge of what is even good biologically or bad biologically. It does not come to the world with a certain determined way of behaving. I think we can make sense of this in a lot of ways, but let's look at this. Let's stay with this infant first. So, but the infant comes into the world with ingrained mode of behavior. For example, the art of sucking. The infant do not have to be taught to suck. They suck, should I say, instinctively. So it is something in them, something that is like follow come, that that is adaptive. That is why it is selected for. So we can say that there are rudimental or a certain rudimental symbolic order that is ingrained in the DNA in itself, that it is ingrained in the formation and the structure and the functioning of our nervous system, so to speak. So the infant comes into the world with rudimental or primary symbolic order or way of making meaning of things. So, but one cannot say this is this is in the field of the symbolic order, but at least it is something that directs one's behavior. And this is what the symbolic order does. The symbolic order, I will not define it so that it will not be restricted to a certain idea, but I will explain it and then you give your own definition. The symbolic order is the total, if you can say total, of the rules, whether written or not written, mostly not written, of the rules of being a human being, of being a Nigerian. Not really a rules, but a certain internalized. It's as if it's part of you. As you grow up into a habit of being like this. There are sets of rules, sets of do's and don'ts, or sets of ways of pursuing a certain aspect of life, or ways of being in a certain way. So the symbolic order encompasses this sets of traditions, sets of culture, sets of customs, and so on and so forth, that gives meaning to the life of the human being. Now, what one will say is that, does this mean that the animals do not have symbolic order? In a certain way, I say that the child is already equipped with a certain behavior that allows it to be able to tap into the wealth of the external world, and though they might not be able to think about it as the external world at this state of their cognitive development, but at least they have this instinct that allows them to do this. Same goes for a lot of animals. If you go to the unicellular animals, you realize that these animals, they have um a way of going about their life and perpetrating their life. For example, the amoeba might not have a very complex nervous system, but it is able to move away from what is bad and move towards what is good for it. You can think about this in the sense of earthworm and salt. As soon as earthworm is going towards salt, it retracts itself because this thing is not good for it, because it will use osmosis to move water from its body and it dies off. So in this way, this particular level, evolutionary level, that as if it's a default setting, as if it's a foundation for other things to be built on, is what one can say is the symbolic order for these unicellular animals. It is the way that direct their being in the world, so to speak. So we can say the symbolic order is what directs life in the world. For example, we have the symbolic order of bees, where they have a colony, they have a way of being in the world, and the way of being in the world is assisted to a certain extent by the fundamental structure and functioning of their nervous system. Same goes for goats. In fact, it becomes even more complex with apes that have hierarchies of and parks that have hierarchies of political system, that one can even say they have a sort of morality, as the primatologist might say. But in any sense, one immediately see how complex that of the human being is. Does not mean they are exceptional in the way that will make them better than the animals themselves. The human animal itself just have a very complex and different symbolic order. And because this complex and different symbolic order, due to its complexity, consequential to its complexity and its variability and its adaptability, it causes something that is both advantageous and disadvantageous. One, it causes the organism to be able to live in the world in a better way, in a way that it can manipulate the world, in a way that it can perpetrate itself better. But this particular complexity actually split the human subject off even further from its biology, its reality. So in this way, the symbolic order of the human being can be discussed in psychoanalysis, in Lacanian psychoanalysis to be specific, as something that the real of the biology of the organism reach out to narrate itself in the world, and the narrating itself in the world is able, because it's also a human being that reflects on its own thought, that can reflect on its own decisions, its own moral and survival decisions. Is now a human being that is cut off from what biology might be, and that is in a certain sense navigating biology from a level of the symbolic, from the level of language, in the sense that the human being is a human being now of language. Now, before the infant is issued in, is inaugurated into the place of language, the human being is first of all the human being is first of all something that is more like the amoeba, going towards what gives it pleasure, and away from what gives it pain, in this sense. But on the language level, what gives us pleasure and what gives us pain gets to be re-narrated as good and bad. And in this good and bad, what gives us pleasure can be bad, and in a certain sense not be able to afford us a conscience, or not be able to afford us a lighter conscience. And in so doing, what is good becomes something that we do not do, and sometimes what is bad becomes something that we do, because this actually helps us to be able to, or if I say good and bad, I am talking about what affords the organism pain and pleasure. So in a certain sense, because the organism has entered into this symbolic order of custom, of rules, of good and bad, is it can is now able to work against its biology in a certain sense. There are a lot of animals that works against their individual interest, but we can also say something of the symbolic order that comes into play there, of the sociability, of the amount of sociable interaction that the organism have in its surrounding. So now, what is the symbolic order, so that we will not go out of our point? The symbolic order now stands for something that anchors the organism, anchors life in a narration that allows it to be able to perpetuate itself, that allows it, for example, when we talk about evolution, we talk about that the genome, so to speak, the genome now as a collection of gene, is what is passed from one generation to another. It's not the organism as a whole itself, that the genome is the center of evolution, and they call it new evolution. So in a certain sense, even while the genome is the center of evolution, the organism has to work as a whole, has to work towards this particular survivability of the genome. So as a whole, the organism has to escape death, has to eat to sustain itself, has to reproduce to be able to pass this gene from one generation to another. You see this? So in a certain sense, on the higher level, the human being has exploded, has made even more complex this moving towards this ability to on a social level to be able to sustain itself, so that it will be able to pass on its gene, has been able to make this very complex that it is devoid from the molecular level. So in Lacanian psychoanalysis, what they say is that the subject is a bad subject. What I mean by bad subject is BARRED, bad subject, not BAD, in the sense that the subject is incomplete. It's the sense of incompleteness of the subject, the sense of anxiety, the sense of being thrown into the world is as a result of that severing of the human subject from its reality, from the real, which we will talk about, from the reality of the being, from the reality of his drive, of everything the things he craves for, the oral drive, the drive to eat, to not just to eat, but in the human sphere, but also to take in, internalize things, either ideas, either culture, enable to this drive are what is real, but the object that they are going for is something in the symbolic, is something that contains everything that is able to or is allowed to want. Let me stop here, so that it's not as if I'm just talking to myself. What I'm trying to say is that in the symbolic order, for example, you are looking for, let's say you are not looking for anything, but you just want to get something. You just want to get something. So you go to the mall, right? The mall itself is the symbolic order. Why you, as an organism that has this drive to get something, to acquire something, to have proximity to something, in the sense that the amoeba will also want to acquire food, in the sense that the dog will also want to acquire food, rest, and a lot of things. Same goes for the human being. The human being is in itself as an infant is like the person that do not know what he wants, but he knows that he wants. The desire is there, but the object of desire is absent. So the symbolic order is is like a treasure trove of objects that meets this your desire. Or it's like someone you tell someone that I am in need of a gun. The person will ask you, what kind of gun do you want? You say, I don't really know. But the dealer will come with a lot of guns that he himself is able to get. It's not that it encompasses all the guns that you can get, but the guns that he himself has as a seller. Maybe he sells short guns, or he sells bazookas. So if the different bazooka is what he will get. So he cannot go and get AK-47. So when he brings this bazooka to you, all you have to do is choose from these selections of bazooka, or choose from this selection of pistols. But in any sense, this does not mean that this encompass all that is about guns, or all the types of guns. So same goes for the mall. The mall will only give you what they can say. They cannot come and give you what they don't, what is not in their line of business. So the symbolic order always give you what it has, or what it has accumulated as an object of desire. And so as a human subject that is being alienated and brought into the field of the symbolic order, the field of symbols and language, and of signs, you get to enter into this place being limited to a certain amount of good and bad, a certain amount of value. And this is where you can choose from. And when you try to get something else outside of this, it is called psychosis. It is very close to psychosis. In fact, it is moving towards psychosis, which one might call madness in layman terms, but it does not equate each other. So this is what I'm saying. I hope I've been able to make sense of what the symbolic order is. It is a place, a treasure trove of objects of desire, of systems that allows you to gives you methods towards acquiring what you want to acquire, towards fulfilling your desire, or giving you things that might fulfill that desire that has no object yet, that drive that has no object yet. You look at this baby, and when they are crawling, they do not really know what is good or bad to their biology. So they just start picking things up and putting it in their mouth until they are schooled in what is good and what is bad in sense of eating and in sense of everything. So, if you have questions on this, you just ask me. I don't think I have exhaustively talked about what the symbolic order is, but as we progress, as we talk about maybe the real, the imaginary, which is also different from the symbolic order, I think here I should quickly say that the symbolic order is not really an object, but it is sets of rules, sets of traditions, set of customs that allows you to get this object, that gives you a method towards this object, that gives you a way that you will use to get to this object. So and it also gives meaning, not just ways, but it also gives meaning to those objects that are in the world. And these objects will get to know that they are the imaginary, those things that impress on our senses. But then, what makes them good? What makes them bad? What makes them meaningful in themselves is the symbolic order.